Hello class 12th, welcome to the online tutorial sessions for economics. I am Avinash Lambert, your economics guru, and today we are going to continue our 7th chapter, which is excess demand and deficient demand. In today's video we are going to start a new topic, which is measures to control deficient demand or deflationary gap. In the previous video we covered the excess demand and inflationary gap. Now this topic is just the opposite of excess demand, the previous topic, that is measure to control excess demand or inflationary gap. Today's topic, which is measures to control deficient demand and deflationary gap, is just the opposite of the previous video. So if you have studied the previous video, you just have to see this video and start making notes and you will understand the rest. It's just opposite of the previous video. Now before starting topic, I must ask you this question: do you know what is deficit demand or deficient demand? Deficit demand or deficient demand is a situation at full employment level where aggregate supply is more than the aggregate demand. That is the deficient or deficit demand, or the situation where deflationary gap arises. Now, to control the deficient or deficit demand, various measures are taken by the government and central bank, and we have divided our measures on the basis of two, which is the fiscal measures and the monetary measures. Under the fiscal measures, the steps are taken by the central government, and under the monetary measures, the steps are taken by the central bank to control the money supply by the banking system. And under the fiscal measure, the central government with its policies and with its expenditure or taxes, they try to control the income of the general public. Now I won't be explaining what is fiscal measure, what is taxes, what is, because I have already explained that in the previous video. In today's video it will be very short, it will be brief, because you already know that. Now under the fiscal measure, we are starting with the first one, which is fiscal measure, and under the fiscal measure there are two methods. The first is by decreasing the taxes. Now to control the deficient demand, government may reduce the additional taxes, or deduct the existing tax rates, with which it will increase the income of people of the economy. Because if the taxes are being decreased, if the rate of interest, if the taxes are decreased from 10% to now 5% only, then in that case our income will increase, our saving will increase, and if saving is increasing, it means our income is increasing, right? So it increases our income, and with the increase in the income of people in the economy, the purchasing power of the people will also increase, and consequently the aggregate demand will also increase. That is, if the taxes decreases, the purchasing power increases, and if the purchasing power increases, students, the income also increases, and thus the aggregate demand also increases. Now under the fiscal measure, the second method, the second step which is taken by the government, the central government, is the increase in public expenditure. Now public expenditure, you already know, public expenditure refers to the expenditure undertaken by the government in public interest, means for the public, for the people, like expenditure on public health, like hospitals. Now if the government will increase the level of public expenditure, they are increasing the expenditure, then these expenditure will no more be required to incur by the public. If the government is expending on our public on our health, then we don't have to pay, and if we don't have to pay, our income is increasing, we can save that money, and if we are saving, that means our income is increasing, right? So this will result in the increase of our income, and with the increase of our income, purchasing power of household will also increase, and consequently the aggregate demand. So it means if the public expenditure, if the government is expending more, if the public expenditure is increased, then the purchasing power is also increasing, and if purchasing power is increasing, it means that income is increased, and so does the aggregate demand. Now, do you know why do we have the measures of deficit demand or deficient demand? Because these measures are taken to control the deflationary gap, to control the deficient demand. We want to come in the equilibrium, or we don't want to face the deficit demand. For not facing the deficit demand, to control the deficit demand, we are taking these physical and monetary measures. That's why we are studying, right? So we have covered the physical measures. Now it's time for the monetary measures. And students, I want you all to take out your copies also and take your pen. Keep writing whatever the thing is coming in the captions. Don't miss any single line. Now let's start with the second measure, which is monetary measure. We have completed the fiscal measure. Now under the monetary measure are taken by the central bank of the economy to control or to influence the money supply. Now under the monetary measures, the monetary measures are divided into two, that is quantitative measures and the qualitative measures. You have already studied this. Now under the quantitative measure, we are doing the quantitative measure first, right? Now under the quantitative measure, the first one is the bank rate. You already know what is bank rate. Now if we decrease the bank rate, the commercial bank will get loans at lower rate of interest. If the bank rate is decreased, if the central bank has decreased the bank rate, then in that case they will be getting loans from the bank at very low interest rate, and in that case they will be applying for more loans, because at very less interest rate they can have the money, and if they can have the money, they can give loans to the general public, and thus money supply can be increased, right? Now this will encourage people to take loans, and money supply in the economy will increase. With the increase in the money supply, purchasing power of the people in the economy will also increase, and thus the aggregate demand will increase, right? So we can escape the deficit or deficient demand. If bank rate will go down, the money supply will go up, and so does the purchasing power increases, and thus the aggregate demand. Now the second is decrease in repo rate. You have decreased the bank rate. What was bank rate? Bank rate is a rate at which the central bank provides the commercial bank loans for short term purposes. Now for long term purposes. Now for the repo rate, it is the rate of interest at which central bank provide loans to the commercial bank at short term purposes, right? So this is the difference. Now if the repo rate is decreased, to control the deficit demand or deficient demand, they have to decrease the repo rate. If repo rate will decrease, commercial bank will get the loans at lower interest rate from central bank, and commercial banks will also charge low interest rate from the public against loan, because they don't have to give much more interest rate, they can easily pay that interest rate, and because they have not lost so much money, they just have to give the normal interest rate. In that case, they will be providing loans to the general public in the normal or lower interest rate. Now this will encourage the public to get loans, and money supply in the economy will increase, and with the increase in money supply, purchasing power of people will increase, and consequently the aggregate demand will also increase. So if repo rate is decreasing, money supply will increase, and if money supply is increasing, purchasing power will also increase of the people, and thus the aggregate demand will also increase. Now the next one is in reverse repo rate. The central bank decreases the repo rate, then commercial banks will prefer to keep less amount with the central bank, because they don't find it attractive, because they are giving very less interest rate for it. So the commercial bank won't be giving their cash reserve to the central bank, they won't be giving it, and as a result, availability of amount for the public loan with the commercial bank will increase, because they are not giving their money to central bank. In that case, they will give that money to the general public as loans. this will increase the money supply in the economy. If they are giving loans to the general public, it will increase the money supply, and consequently the purchasing power of the people in the economy will increase. Now, with the increase in the purchasing power, aggregate demand will also increase. Now, if the reverse repo rate is decreasing, it means the money supply will increase, and so does the purchasing power and also the aggregate demand. Now, the next one is the fourth one, which is decrease in cash reserve ratio. Now, what is CRR and SLR? CRR is a ratio, it's a cash reserve ratio. It's the portion or the fraction of total deposit which the commercial bank have to keep with the central bank as reserve. And what is SLR? SLR is that fraction of total deposit that the commercial bank has to keep with itself as reserve in the form of cash, gold and securities, etc. Now, if they decrease the cash reserve ratio or the SLR, if the central bank is decreasing both the CRR and SLR, then in both the cases, if CRR decreases, commercial bank have to keep lesser amount with the central bank, and as a result availability of amount for public loans in the commercial bank will increase. If what is CRR? CRR is that portion of money which this commercial bank has to keep with central bank, and if that portion decreases, then they have to keep very less amount with the central bank, and if they have to keep less amount, they can have some more amount as reserve so that they can give loans to the general public, and this will increase the money supply. And if money supply is increasing, it means the purchasing power is also going to increase, and so does the aggregate demand, right? So if cash reserve ratio is decreasing, money supply will increase, purchasing power will also increase, and so does the aggregate demand, it will also increase. And the same thing happens in the SLR. If SLR decreases, commercial bank have to keep, again the same story, lesser amount with itself as a reserve, and the result availability of amount of public loans will increase with the commercial bank. This will increase the money supply in the economy, and consequently money purchasing power of the people in the economy will increase. And if purchasing power is increasing, it means that the aggregate demand will also increase. So if SLR is decreasing, money supply will increase, purchasing power will also increase, and the aggregate demand will consequently increase. Now the next one and the last one in the quantitative measure is the open market operation. Now under the open market operation, what do we do in the previous video? For controlling the excess demand, we sold the securities. Now we have to do the just opposite, we have to purchase the securities in the open market operations. Now in case of deficit or deficient demand, RBI will purchase the government security so that money available with RBI will get transferred to public. Are you getting it? Here they want to control the situation of deficit demand, right? So they will provide more money, they will increase the money supply. How they will do it? They will buy the securities, and to buy the security they will give the money to the general public, and it will increase the money supply in the economy. It will increase the money supply, and with the increase in money supply, the purchasing power will also increase, and in turn aggregate demand will also increase. So if there are purchases of security, money supply will also increase, purchasing power will also increase, and the aggregate demand will also increase. Is that clear? Now let's come to the last one, which is qualitative measures. Now under the qualitative measure, you have to learn only one, which is margin requirement. You already know what is margin requirement. That is the amount of collateral security which we have to give on the loan. Suppose I have to take loan of 1 lakh rupee, and for that I have to give the collateral security of 1,20,000. You have to give 20,000 more. But if that margin requirement is decreased, suppose now I have to give only 5,000 more, that is 1,05,000, then I will be more interested in buying the loans, in having the loans, in applying for the loans. Why? Because I have to give less interest rate. The margin requirement is very less. The collateral security I have to give very less. So margin requirement, you already know what it is. Now if the margin requirements will decrease, borrowers will get the loans for more amount against securities. Previously I have to give 1,20,000 rupees, but now I have to give only 1,05,000 rupees. So I will be more interested in having the loans. This will encourage the public to take loans, and consequently money supply in the economy will increase, and with the increase in the money supply, purchasing power will also increase, and in turn aggregate demand will also increase. Now students, those are the measures, methods by the central government and the central bank to control the situation of deficit demand or deflationary gap. Now students, I want you all to complete your notes of this lecture, and students, that's all for this video. Stay home, stay safe, and see you soon.